Hello. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I know it always takes a lot of effort, for those of you that work. Well, I mean, we all work, right? And it's all relative, but to, after a long day to come here, you're a really important part of Luke's creative process tonight. And this is his theatrical debut. So I'm really proud to be hosting him. Luke would like feedback, so you're welcome to email him after the show, or you can talk to him afterwards. If you need his email, he'll give it to you. For those of you that don't know it, it is Luke, L-U-K-E, is back at gmail.com, so he'd like to know what took you in, anything that took you out, anything you wanted more information about. So, here we go. Luke Ford in Eroticized Rage.
As my dad would say, let's get our freak on. My dad's a Seventh-day Adventist preacher, Christian evangelist. I don't think he's ever said that phrase in his life. But as a preacher's kid, I seemed like much of my youth just sitting where you're sitting, watching him up here preach away. So now it's my turn to turn the tables and give you a taste for a minute of my father's preaching. Friends, you were bought with a price. The only people who can move the world are people who the world cannot move. They know joy unspeakable because they know the apostolic gospel. Friends, do you want to get right with God tonight? Right now. Do you want assurance of being in heaven forever? That's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, so that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. So if you want to connect with God tonight, I want you to come on down and pray with me. We have people here who will pray with you. Friends, if you'll just close your eyes right now, let's just talk to God, just us. Lord, we're terrible sinners. We are unworthy of your love and your righteousness and your salvation. But you so loved us that you were willing to die on a cross to save us from sin. And we thank you for that, O Lord. That's my dad. My mother, all I have left of her is this book that she wrote. It's called Fireside Stories. And it was published in 1968 when I was 2 years old. And it's a book of Christian inspiration for children. And I keep a copy at home, and I kind of pour through it, looking for messages for my life, because she died before I was 4 years old. And I go through all these stories, and the only message I can get is that she wants me to be a good Christian. Like, I get nothing out of this book. There's no great writing in this book. Like, I'm looking for messages from my mother, and there's nothing here. Like, why did she leave me a note or something? She knew she was dying. When I turned 1, she got the diagnosis of terminal cancer. But what she's left me is this book, and it's no help whatsoever. So when my mother dies, my dad is pursued by all sorts of other women in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. My father, Desmond Ford, is a big catch, because he's the chair of the religion department at Avondale College in Australia, where I grew up. And this one woman corners him in the library at Avondale College and says, I have a vision. I had a vision that we are to marry. My dad says, well, if that was true, I would have had the vision too, and I didn't. The church pressures my dad to get married because it's not good for him to be pursued by women. He has 3 kids, of whom I'm the youngest. They need a mother. And my dad needs a secretary because he's a very busy man. So my dad marries his secretary. And this was approved by my mother. She pushed for this before she died. She said, you should marry Jill. So about 6 months after she dies, they have a quick wedding because my dad's got to get off to England to get his second PhD. This is in New Testament studies. First PhD in rhetoric, this one Pauline rhetoric, this one in New Testament studies, the study of the time of the end, the apocalyptic literature of the Revelation. And I finally have a mother, and I just cling to Jill. And I tell her, I'm a lucky boy. Most boys have only one mother. I've had lots. I had so many different homes looking after me during the years that my mother was dying. My dad was way too busy to look after his kids. He had his work. He had his Christian evangelism. I'm a very lucky boy. I've had lots of mothers, but I don't want any more. And I clung to Jill, and she clung to me because my dad's a very tense man. He preaches all about the gospel of Jesus Christ and the true happiness of the apostolic gospel, but he's just terribly anxious, terribly tense. And so his touch is unpleasant because there's just so much anxiety in his body, because he was basically ignored by his parents. And so he found Jesus as a teenager, devoted his life to Jesus Christ, but just the worry and the anxiety and the fears just wrap around him in these circles of body tension. So to touch my dad is very unpleasant, and my dad does not like to touch. But I clung to my mother, and she clung to me. And she would say things like, "You saved my bacon," because there wasn't much love between my father and my stepmother. Much of it had to do with my stepmother was insane half the month. Just the 2 weeks before her period, she just had rages and depression and anger, and she would get violent, and she would slap me, and I'd get bouncing off the furniture. And my dad was busy with his work, and my older brother and sister saw where this train wreck was going, and they got out of the home as soon as possible. They're 8 and 10 years older than me. It took me a little while, but I finally found something that kind of made me feel better. When I was about 7, I discovered that I could just sit in the chair in the living room while everything else was going on around me, and I could tell myself stories. I could imagine that I was going to be a great general, leading troops into battle. And I thought I'd be awesome because I had the ability to be totally ruthless. I had the ability to be completely without emotion, just like my father. I thought I could be a great explorer because I had no emotions. I would not know fear. I would just go where no white man had gone before. I imagined I'd become a Christian missionary and going to darkest Africa and darkest India and save the benighted third world peoples by showing them the love of Jesus. And within a few minutes of sitting down and starting to tell myself these stories and adventures, like all my worries would go away, and I felt great. It was like this instant transmutation. And then at age 8, I finally entered school. I grew up a Seventh-day Adventist, and the prophet of the Seventh-day Adventist Church told me you should not enter school too early. So I was held back until I was 8. And I entered school in 2nd grade. And I started finding this other force that kind of took me out of my misery. It's like I put my finger in the power socket of the universe, because I felt this like sexual thing starting to develop. I'd found a book on reproduction and related issues in my mother's library, and it absolutely fascinated me. And so now I had this whole new fantasy world that I could start to enter. And it made everything else okay. I wasn't able to attach to people very well. I was very verbal, but very abusive to other people. My dad has a PhD in rhetoric, so my dad's very good at cutting people down, and I kind of imitated him. My mother was a rageaholic, insane, in bed, depressed. I couldn't learn from her. My brother and sister had hightailed it out of there. And so I kind of attached to the mystery and allure of sex. There was this glorious day, great day, 4th grade. My friend Wayne and I, we'd go into his brother's trailer, and come out with a stack of girly magazines. And we go out back, and we lie down among the tobacco plants, and we just open them up. It's the first time I've seen like Playboy at Penthouse. And it's just fantastic. I mean, finally, I'm 9, 10 years old, and I finally feel understood. Like, these girls in these magazines understand me better than my parents, better than Jesus, better than my classmates. I mean, this is where it's at. Like, my classmates, the girls have no interest in sex. Like, these are very modest, demure Seventh-day Adventist girls. So the other boys, they too have this drive. And so they're buggering each other, and they're buggering farm animals. We live in a rural part of Australia. And so I hear Catholics like it in the rectory, but Seventh-day Adventist boys like it in the dunny. Like, we'd have outside toilets we'd call the dunny, and the boys would go in there and they'd bugger each other. And that's how they got rid of that frustration. And I walked right up to the edge of that and stopped, because I knew that was a really serious sin. So I set some bottom lines for myself at age 10. No buggery, no farm animals. And I got so scared by the power of these magazines, by how much these girls understood what was primary for me, what was on my mind, and what I wanted more than anything, that I resolved no more looking at any naked pictures. That is just too dangerous. And so I kind of attached to naked pictures, but I need to get a thrill somehow to kind of get away from myself. So I started lighting fires. We live in a rural area 2 hours outside of Sydney, and there's just a lot of dry grass. And so I get matches, and I go outside the house, and in this field, and I light the matches, and I get the flame going, and then I just run up. And I look back, and I see the flames building and building, and they're kind of going up this tree, and spreading, and I feel fantastic. I just feel amazing, because I have made the outside world match my inside world. Like, inside, I am a conflagration of anger and frustration and fear and anxiety, and now the field is alight. And I have done this. I have done something consequential. Like, my dad can move and save hundreds of souls. Well, I've lit a frickin' field on fire. A neighbor saw the flames and put them out before much damage was done. And when I told my friend what I'd done, he said, if you ever do that again, I'll tell on you. So I was relieved that nobody got hurt. But I think if I'd grown up in the occupied territories, I would have become a suicide bomber. Like, I understand suicide bombers. The people are uncool, and I was definitely uncool. And they have no status, nobody wants them, and now they're promised they'll become cool if they just blow themselves up. And their families will get honor if they blow themselves up. And it'll all be for a good cause, it'll all be for a just cause. And I belong to a small insular group, Seventh-day Adventists, who are regarded as total weirdos in Australia. Australia is a pretty secular country, unlike America. And so I knew what it was like to belong to an insular group and regard the outside world as a wash and evil. And I'm sure if I'd been propagandized into blowing myself up, I would have signed up. 5th grade. First time a girl shows an interest in me. She's kind of chubby, so. And I got scared when she showed an interest in me. So I found these tacks, and I put them on her chair, pointy side up. And she sat down on the tacks and yelped, there was blood. That scared me. I'm not sure what scared me more, causing that bodily pain or her liking me. They were both unfathomable, way too frightening. Another day she got too close to me, and so I started kicking her. And she said, one day you'll know what it's like to be kicked by someone you love. And I think she cursed me. We moved to the United States in 6th grade, 1977, and America is fantastic because there's no corporal punishment in school. My teachers used to wail on me. My mother used to hit me just because she was so angry. My father would be very deliberate. He'd give me a sermon first before he'd spank me. Say, this is all for your own good. This hurts me more than it hurts you. You'll only learn through pain. Take off your pants, kneel down, and then he'd just like wail away at me. And if you cry, I'll hit you twice as long. Whack, 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 whack. And like I'd be bruised. I couldn't sit down for a couple of days. Only happened a handful of times, but it left a very strong impression. But in America, that wasn't cool. I never got hit by my parents after we moved to America. Also, I was 11 years old. America was great, too, because there were no school uniforms where I went to school, in my Seventh Adventist school in America. And the girls wore makeup. In school in Australia, the girls didn't wear makeup. So in America, the girls wore lip smacker. And it was just fantastic. It was like this fruity, strawberry, tropical, vanilla, made the lips really bright and shiny, and they smelled fantastic, and I just wanted to like kiss them and lick up the strawberries. Lip smack is the greatest thing, and it was the most beautiful girls who put on the lip smacker, or at least I was looking at the most beautiful girls. Whatever they did, I noticed. And the other great thing about America was that they didn't know I was a loser. They didn't have Google in 1977. So, what do I mean by social status? Do people want to be around you? Like, social ostracism is just another word for death. It's horrible. It makes you want to light fires and read porn magazines. So, early in 6th grade, the most beautiful girl in the class, Cindy, she walks by my desk one day and she drops a note on it and asks me on the note, "Will you go with me?" No one had ever dropped a note on my desk before, ever. And the most beautiful girl in the class in the United States of America wanted to go with me. And I was just overwhelmed. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So the rest of my story is just downhill from there. Nothing in my 47 years of life compares to the exhilaration and the high that I got from that. I mean, not even when I was banging porn stars. I mean, this Cindy, 6th grade, tall, brunette, looked like Jacqueline Smith. She wanted to go with me. And I just got flooded with emotion. And when your car gets flooded, it doesn't work. And when I got flooded, I didn't work. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't close to anyone. I kind of used my verbal skills primarily to keep people at bay. So I didn't know who to talk to. I knew if I talked to my parents, they would absolutely forbid it. When my brother at age 14 got a girlfriend, my dad marched over to the girl's house and broke up the relationship. I mean, that would just be unfathomably shameful. So I responded the only way I knew how. I just teased Cindy publicly and made her life hell. Like, when she would talk to other guys, I'd get jealous and I'd say, "Hey, look at Cindy and Mark Friedel. All the world loves a lover. Young love, isn't it sweet?" I have to understand why I couldn't say yes to what I wanted most, because this pattern has continued throughout my life. It was like 2 months ago after synagogue. I'm outside after synagogue, and this beautiful young woman, totally age inappropriate, like early 20s, she's smiling at me. And she's just my type. She's like this little brunette, and she's got glasses, and she looks intellectual. And she's smiling at me. And so I figured something's wrong here, and so I'm looking around to try to figure out who she's smiling at. And then I turn back around, so there's no one else, and she smiles even broader at me. And it's like, rockets are going off. There's just so much voltage in her smile. And I got so scared that I walked off. And it took me about 10 minutes to calm myself down, and I came back looking for her. She was gone. This happens to me throughout my life. When I am handed what I wanted most, not just girls, mainly girls, but not just girls, I just feel unworthy. And I don't know, if you might want to think about the way your parents relate to you. My father was all about achievement achievement, status, how do we look in the eyes of other people, he was completely afraid of emotion, could not deal with any emotion, could not convey love. And so I grew up thinking achievement's where it's at, and just the total inability to deal with emotion. Like verbal interchange in my home with my father was like judo, because he had the PhD in rhetoric, self-made man, wants to show you how smart he is. My mother is insane half the month. I had a hard time relating to her. And so I just had no tools for saying yes to what I want most. Like if I could have just one do-over in my life, it would be to say yes to Cindy Anderson. And to say yes, and how do we do this? At which point she probably would have gotten really turned off. And like any illusion she had about me would have been just gone right there. But I have this fantasy that we could have created our own Moonrise Kingdom, that we could have created something, maybe this whole screwed up journey, might not have happened if I'd learned in 6th grade how to connect. I started making progress in the summer before 7th grade. The boys and the girls would meet at the Pacific Union College pool in the Napa Valley, and we'd play these keep-away games. So we'd have like a rubber ball, and it'd be girls against the boys, and we'd all pair up with our partner. And my partner was Jeannie, and she wasn't so incredibly Cindy-type beautiful that I couldn't relate to her. But she was just amiable and nice. And so we tossed the ball back and forth, and when Jeannie would get the ball, this was to be my excuse to like put my arms around her. I wasn't quite there yet, and so I approached it more like tackle football. I like get charging through the ball like a safety, like this, the receiver's got the ball, and I just like deliver a bone-crunching tackle. Of course, I would never deliver bone-crunching tackles against any of the guys on the playground because I don't like getting hurt. So I only deliver bone-crunching tackles to the very amiable, chubby blonde, because there was just so much padding there I couldn't get hurt. And the guys would pull me aside and say, hey, this game is just an excuse to touch. Just like put your arms around her and feel good. And there were moments where I was able to do that. And that's kind of like the beginning of my learning to connect, where there were moments, and they increased a little bit over the summer before 7th grade, the summer before 8th grade, where maybe half the time I was able to just be gentle, and then the other time I was like Dick Buckets, if you follow 1970s NFL football. Baby steps, baby steps. 10th grade, summer before 11th grade. I'm back at Pacific Union College. I'm away from my family now. They're no longer there. Staying with friends. And I meet a girl in the custodial department. I work in the summer camp for kids. She works in custodial. And she was a grade behind me all through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I didn't notice her. But now I'm 16, and I notice her for the first time. And there's just something about the way she walks. This has this like sway. And she's kind of round. She's not fat, but there's a lot of roundness there. And she's got these like chubby cheeks. And there's just so much roundness and sway. I just feel absolutely mesmerized. I feel a little bit intoxicated. And she talks to me. So that was a really good sign. And she smiled at me. She listened to me. And we just started talking. And it wasn't about theology. My dad's this Seventh-day Adventist theologian, and his life has just consumed with theological controversies and creating dissension and people, always fighting over my father. But Rainey didn't care about theology. And we were able to have regular conversations. We liked the same music. We liked Barry Manilow. We liked SFI. Elton John. And we'd go to the pool, and I got to rub the suntan lotion on her back. So we lay on the cement beside the pool. It was the first time I ever got to do it with one girl that I really, really, really liked. And it was just so sweet and pure. And I was able to separate my love for Rainey from my love for Playboy, which I relapsed into that year. Like after being really good for 7 years, no Playboy, no penthouse, I relapsed and I was into it big time. But I kept that separate from my love for Rainey. So much so that when she would show up at the pool in a very modest, demure black bathing suit, it was painful for me to look at it because there was just so much exposed flesh of the woman I loved. She just seemed so vulnerable. And it was almost too much intimacy. It made me anxious. And I'm swimming in the pool one day with Rainey, and this little black boy suddenly pops up between us. He's wearing this mask, and he turns to me and says, "Why is your penis sticking out like a lance?" Like, I try to keep things like pure with Rainey. I try to like separate out that, those nasty erections from my pure, sweet, innocent love for Rainey. And this little boy, like, I grab him and I dunk him, and Rainey just yelps, like this yelp, and like swims away. And I'm like, "Grr." And then I go chasing after Rainey, because with the fright, the erection's gone down. And like I hop out of the pool to try to show her that I haven't been stalking her through the water with a loaded gun in my pants. And we never do talk about what happened. But I hate that. Like, I like my life divided in these very neat, separate compartments. And to have, like, the sex compartment rearing its ugly head in my pure, innocent first love is just really icky. Summer comes to an end. My mother picks me up, takes me home. We live 2.5 hours drive away in Auburn, California. It's like 100 degrees out, but it's just winter in my soul. I feel so desolate. And I write Rainey a letter every day. She replies maybe twice a week. Like, I'm way more into her, I think, than she is into me, which is a lifelong pattern which I need to understand. And then one weekend when I go back, she says she's going to a Journey concert that night with a college guy. And I get so threatened. I don't make any reaction to her, but I just cut her off. I don't write to her anymore. That's it. A few months later, she writes me saying how hurt she is and she doesn't understand what happened, but boom. I can't deal with that. But I discovered this great new hobby. In my 11th year of high school, I discovered masturbation. It's fantastic. Like, it's frightening at first. Like, I didn't really know what was happening as I was reading this book and pushing on myself, and then suddenly, like, all the tension and pain and anxiety in my whole body suddenly, like, from my head to my toes, it suddenly, like, rushes together and then goes shooting out all over my book, all over my legs, all over the couch. It's like, it was such a mess. And it was frightening. Like, that had never happened to me before. And so I cleaned it up, and I swore I'd never do that again. And I think that lasted about 18 hours. And so I developed my porn magazine collection, and I really honed my hobby to a fine art. And mainly with my 7th grade teacher. So many fantasies about her, and it's kind of awkward because I was homeschooled that year. 22. So I'm pacing myself. I don't want to just go charging into the sex. I realize that might be a little dangerous. So 22, I get to UCLA, and I stay on this special quiet floor. I'm still a virgin, and it's a quiet floor for serious students. So it's mainly Jews who I've never met before in my life, and Asians. And there's this Korean girl who I really have the hots for because she's Christian. And even though I've now rejected Christianity at this point in my life, I'm an atheist, and I'm a communist, and I want nothing to do with my dad's religion. But there's something alluring about the sweet, demure Christianity, and I want inside of it. Like, I want to get off on her God. Like, I want to, like, all the things that Christianity did to me growing up, like, I wanted to fuck it. But I'm very lazy. I wasn't willing to put the effort in that it was probably going to take to seduce the Korean. So I went Chinese. And there was this girl on my floor who also liked reading books. She was Chinese. She was just 4'10". And she read this novel that I was working on, and she pointed out the parts that were anatomically impossible. Like I'd written out this scene where a girl was having sex with a gear shift in a car, and she said that wasn't possible. I'd never had sex, but it's just kind of how I was thinking about it. And the week of Valentine's Day, 1989, we spent our first night together. And I'm so excited. Like I'm almost 23. I'm ready to lose my virginity. And I have this very strong moral code. I regard myself as very rational and very disciplined. Even though I'm no longer a Christian, I'm going to do the right thing. But when I try to get inside of her, I can't do it. It doesn't work. And so I know this is wrong. I go into my cupboard drawer and I pull out the Vaseline. And I just start slathering on the Vaseline, even though I know I can make my condom break. So exposing her to pregnancy, me to STDs. I know this is not what you do, but I have to get inside of her. And even then, it doesn't work. So finally she says, stop. Let me do this. So she lays me down on my back. She clambers on top of me. She guides me in, and I'm no longer a virgin. And it's fantastic. And when I come out of my room to wash up, because I really got a thing about cleanliness, like all these guys in the hall were listening the whole time. And they're like, quietly. And now I'm no longer a virgin. But I'm frightened by my lack of control. And I'm frightened because my life has come crashing down around me. I have what the doctors call chronic fatigue syndrome. So I basically have to stay in bed about 18 to 20 hours a day. I'm able to make it to a class or two, and that's about it. And finally, in June of 1989, I'm now 23, I have to drop out of UCLA. And I go back to my parents' home, which is like a nightmare. I do not want to go home to my parents, but I'm so sick, and like, who else is going to take me? And when I'm there, I start renting porn videos. And I'm so sick, all I can do is wank to pornography. And it frightens me, the power that these videos have over me. So much power that while my dad is in the kitchen doing his thing, I'm in the living room, right next door to where my father is preparing some sermon about salvation through faith. And I'm watching Debbie Does Dallas 5 and rubbing one out. And he's like right there. He could have walked in at any time. It scares me to death. I decide I got to convert to Judaism. And I've got to do it whole hog. Because porn and sex has way too much power over me. So I completely cut out the masturbation. I gather up all my porn magazines into a pile and I burn them. As I watch the brown smoke rising into the air, I kind of see my evil, wicked lust just disappearing with it, going up to heaven. I just give it all to God. And I just turn my back on my evil, sinful lust. And that lasts for several years. But then, at 27, I have the misfortune of meeting through a singles ad a young Jewish woman with E-cup breasts. Now, if she'd just been a D, I probably would have been up to say no, let alone a C or a B. But she was like 5'2", and she was like Dolly Parton. And the first time she came to visit me, I didn't touch her. Like, I was so honorable. I was still like really into God and Torah. But the second time she came to visit me, I just couldn't hold out anymore. And then I was just off to the races. There's just such a difference between being with one woman and then being with two. It's like when you're just being with one woman, like the sex is so special, that you almost can't imagine doing it with anyone else. It's like something unique that the two of you have shared and it bonds you. But then once you, like the Chinese girl was an A cup, now I'm with an E cup, and it's fantastic. It's like this great mountain that I get to climb 3 times a day. It's like, ah. Oh. And then And then I meet this intellectual girl who's an ACOP, but she had her ovaries out, so we don't have to use a condom. And that's fantastic. And then I moved in with her, and when my parents put us in the shower, they rent me out of the well. So I fly to Orlando to move in with the ACOP intellectual, and she throws me out after a couple of months. But I've been preparing for this with all these singles ads, so I meet this middle-aged black woman alcoholic and hook up with her, but I don't use a condom. But I don't think I didn't get a disease from it and didn't get her pregnant. And then I meet the big sister of this girl at synagogue who's like a Jewish biker chick. And it's just great, man. I'm just like having a good time. I moved to Los Angeles because my hero, the talk show host and theologian who inspired me to convert to Judaism, Dennis Prager, says he might have work for me. So I moved to Los Angeles. I've made a partial recovery from my chronic fatigue syndrome. I come here in the spring of 1994, and I look up the Korean girl, the demure, sweet, lovely, innocent, pure Christian. She comes over to visit me at this apartment I'm staying at in Westwood. And we're sitting outside in the sunshine. I'm back in Los Angeles. I got my groove on, and I start talking about sex, and she leans over and she just plants a kiss on me. It's like, this is the girl that I've been dreaming of for 6 years. I take her inside the apartment. I take off her clothes. She says she's a virgin. Like, how great is this? And with my dream girl, she's naked. She's on the bed. She's a virgin. She's Christian. I mean, I can't wait to get off on her. And it's really hard to get inside. It's like really hard. And the sex is really bad. It's really bad, again and again and again. And as I'm doing her, I look at her face, and it's not doing her any good. And it's painful for me. It's not pleasurable. This is my dream girl, and it's the worst sex of my life. And after a few days of this, I tell her, look, you'll have other lovers, and they'll be better. So finally the Chinese girl comes over with potatoes one night, my first lover. She saw these potatoes on sale, and she wanted to bring them to me. So she comes over, brings the potatoes, I get her into bed, and it's just so smooth and slick, and it's really good. And afterwards she says, well, how many girls have you been with since me? And I say, about 10. And I ask her, how many guys have you been with me? She says, just one. And then she says, those other girls, they taught you well, because you used to be really awkward. I find my niche blogging about the pornography industry. I'm 27. I remember going to visit this 52-year-old porn star, kitten, natividad. She was big in these 1970s Russ Meyer movies. And at the end of the interview, I ended up having sex with her. I was 27, she was 52. She asked me to do all sorts of things that I would not do. It was like frightening. Where this woman wanted me to place my finger. It was like frightening. So I had a lot of fuss. I published my magnum opus, The History of X, 100 Years of Sex and Film in 1999. I come on TV all the time. I'm on Fox, and I'm in the New York Times and the LA Times because I write this hard-hitting daily blog about the porn industry. I'm Hustle Magazine's Asshole of the Month. My family finds out about what's going on, and didn't I think they were going to find out? I knew they were going to find out. I just didn't care. I mean, did I get into the porn industry to say F you to my father? I mean, perhaps, but it's still, I'm 47 now, it's still the only industry that I've ever found I could write on, write when I wanted to write, not have a boss and make a living. Like, I haven't found any other niche where I can write on it. Like Judaism, I could write my heart out on Judaism all day and I'd make $15, $20 from my blogging on it. I mean, you can't make a living on that. The only topic I found I could make a living on is writing on the porn industry. My family offered me a deal. They said, we'd like you to come home to Australia for a month and consult with the doctors of our choice. Because they were really worried about me. I'm getting all sorts of death threats because the organized crime is like very interpenetrated with parts of the pornography industry. I'm messing with some very dangerous people. I get beat up a few times. I get a ton of death threats. The leading pornographer tells Rolling Stone magazine that I'm going to end up a grease spot on the pavement. My family's worried. Taking me back to Australia for a month, and I'm down with a free trip. Like, you want to pay for something? One of my girlfriends gave me a book called The Givers and the Takers. I see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist comes back with a diagnosis, and my sister hands it to me one evening as I'm at the dinner table in her house, and the psychiatrist says I have narcissistic personality disorder, aka histrionic personality disorder, and that I basically only relate to people for the mirroring and the feedback that they can give me. So this is like classic NPD right here. And the psychiatrist says that I will not be successful in work in my current condition. No decent woman will look at my website and have anything to do with me. That I will just be isolated and miserable. And she recommends that I need 5 to 10 years of inside-oriented psychotherapy. And then maybe I'll get my life on track. And so as I'm sitting there at the table reading this, I think, oh man, I knew it was true. I knew that the basic outlines of what she'd written were true. That there was something fundamentally broken in me, that I just had this insatiable appetite for attention. And that I was always just trying to push people's buttons with my writing and the things I'd say. And I just saw this mountain of work ahead of me. And I'm only into doing the things that I like to do. I'm not really into working in the traditional sense. My stepmother has this adorable pet name for me. She calls me User. And I see now I've got 10 years of hard work ahead of me. When I first went to psychotherapy, I was just talking about the blowjobs I got. But now I see I'm going to have to talk about my father. I think it's like really painful. I mean, I would much rather talk about getting blowjobs from a porn star than my father. And so I'm talking about my dad in therapy, and I'm thinking, what will I feel when my father's coffin is getting lowered into the ground? I think I'd feel relief. But not just with my dad. I've had 2 close friends who died, and my primary reaction when I heard the news was relief, because their relationships were complicated. And I don't like complication in my interpersonal relationships. Like with porn, it's so easy. Porn is fantastic. I mean, there's so much great free streaming stuff online, and you just go on there, and I can find the bukkake stuff that I love, and it's like catching a wave. And it's like I'm out off the shore, and I've got this great wave, and I just ride that wave into shore. And it's such a rush, and you don't exactly know where it'll take you, and you're in the grip of something much stronger and more powerful than yourself. Like, ooh. It's fantastic. It's so much better than negotiating complicated relationships. And every interpersonal relationship has complications and requires negotiation. And I hate negotiating. I hate working things out. I'd much rather read books and write blog posts and screw the world. So my therapist stops me. She says, I just want you to listen for a minute. She says, your father chose his career over you. Chose his work over you. He chose his preaching over your self-interests. He farmed you out to other families so he wouldn't have to take care of you. Chose his stepmother, your stepmother, his second wife, over you, over your interests, because if he divorced her, that would end his preaching career. And your father gives a sermon, he doesn't want you to show up because you'll shame him. How do you feel about that? And I felt the tiniest of stirrings of something when she said that. And she said it was good I could feel something, because if I can feel something, then I can eventually release it. Whoa! Whoo! 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 My ears ringing. Rabbi Abraham Union runs the Rabbinical Council of California, and he kicked me out of his conversion program to Orthodox Judaism. He says I'm the most evil man he ever met. It's Rabbi at Esha Torah, Aryeh Machna, who said, I'm a Torah weirdo. We drum out Torah weirdos. 5 Orthodox synagogues kicked me out as I was trying to do my Orthodox conversion. Woo! Love this healing. Love psychotherapy. Love this healing. Comes too much, so I get back to my sexual fantasies. And as I'm telling my therapist about my fantasies, which mainly revolve around me being a really powerful person, because if I'm a powerful person, then I can have intimacy on my own terms. I can have controllable intimacy. Like regular interpersonal intimacy is so complicated, it's so fraught with so much negotiating, and you're so vulnerable, you can get rejected. And I hate being abandoned. As soon as I perceive or see in reality someone backing away who's important to me, it just like scares the Jesus out of me, just like when I heard Rainey was going to a concert with that college guy, that usually I react by cutting the person out of my life, or I'll react by making a lot of demands on the person, or I'll react by trying to make myself perfect so that they won't leave me. It's like I'm drunk when my fear of abandonment kicks in, when I see people backing away. And so I want things on my terms. I want to be a famous writer so that people will come to me and deal with me on my terms. And so I want to be big so that women will want to come have sex with me on my terms. And as I'm explaining this to my therapist, he says, that sounds a lot like eroticized rage. Because I want the sex to be really nasty. I want to break the rules. What's exciting to me is breaking the rules. That's why I converted to Orthodox Judaism. There are so many rules. Like being Reform and Conservative Jew, like where's the charge in that? Like Orthodox Judaism has all these standards. And there are just so many ways to break the rules that it's like, it's fraught with peril. That's thrilling to me. So eroticized rage, my therapist explains, is usually a reaction to an over-controlling mother figure. And it relates not just to the way that you have sex, but it relates to the way you manipulate and deceive and try to get people into bed. And it infects your whole being. So on the one hand, like the rapist and the predator, usually is filled with eroticized rage. Not everyone with eroticized rage, however, is a rapist or a predator. You can express it in socially acceptable ways by doing one-man plays. But it was infecting my life. Like I would keep interjecting into daily conversations totally inappropriate sexual remarks. My sense of humor was just really cruel. My writing and my blogging frequently had a cruel streak. And I would just play these crazy games with my girlfriend. I'd say, and they were all into it. I date powerful women. That's what I get off on. Powerful women, and they get off on being dominated in the bedroom. So in a sense, it's perfect. They also get off on dating someone they can have contempt for. That kind of shores up their fragile self-esteem. So if they have contempt for me, I look at them as powerful. As driving a nice car and having a nice apartment and being busy and active with charities and having degrees from Harvard and being a medical doctor or running a company. That's what I love. Then I get them into the bedroom. I say, okay, tell me no. Tell me to stop. Tell me I'm hurting you. Tell me I'm too big. And that's my sex life. I've been pursuing intensity and trying to make the game more and more and more and more perverse, trying to get those thrills that are increasingly difficult to achieve, and it's just not working. So I go home after getting the diagnosis and I Google eroticized rage. I learned that it's a symptom of sex addiction. And so I go, wow, I need to start 12-stepping. So about a couple of years ago, I stepped into a 12-step program, and it's really changed my life. It's been 3 years since I've used porn. It's been over 3 years since I've had sex. It's been over 3 years since I've been in a relationship or dated. I I've had a lot of work to do to get healthy. It's been almost a year since I masturbated. And that's been huge for me. Because what I used to do is I used to go through my day and I'd see a cute girl, say at Ralph's. And then I'd go home that night and I'd plug her into one of my erotic rage scenarios. And unfortunately, I have to say, for most days of my adult life, that has been the highlight of my day. You know, those frantic 10 minutes. I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. And so when I stopped that, I no longer can use these fantasies. So I don't spend as much time thinking about the secretary or the Rouse checkout girl, because there's nothing I can do with it. And that's very slowly and incrementally affecting the way that I relate to women. Because I'm no longer just like slotting them into my eroticized rage scenarios, but I'm able to start having some inklings of human connection. About a year ago, I sat in Starbucks with the book from my program, and I was working the fourth step, which means taking a complete thorough moral inventory. And there was one sentence in that book which affected me in the way I look at my life more than one sentence I've ever read. It says the addict tends to use everyone and everything in his life to meet his addictive needs. I look back over my life. Yeah. I just, like, I had this sense, you know, when a girl would be vulnerable, like bipolar alcoholics. Man, I had crazy times with bipolar alcoholics. And I've just always loved attaching myself to powerful people, to like kind of transform myself. I've always learned that if you tell people, oh, you changed my life, you know, they'll want to adopt you. I'm always seeking to be adopted. And so my life has been a perfecting of manipulation techniques, which is why I'm almost 47, never been married, and a bit of a mess. So I started writing out in my four-step moral inventory everybody, everything, every institution, every idea that I resent. It was a very long list, starting with my parents, starting with the rabbis who kicked me out of their shuls for hitting on girls inappropriately. And appropriately. Previous bosses I've had, people who didn't recognize my genius, really resent those people. Then in the next column, I wrote out what they did that I resented. So that started narrowing things. It wasn't the whole person that I resented, it was what they did. And then I wrote out in the next column what part of my life they affected. And anything that touches on my survival, anything that brings up my fears of abandonment, just brings out my furies. Then I listed what role I played, if any, and sometimes I didn't see where I played any role. And then where they did something nasty to me, I realized I had to give them the same level of understanding that I want for myself. Like I want you to have understanding and compassion for me. I am struggling to start developing that understanding and compassion for other people. And as I did that list, I was able to let go of almost all conscious resentment that I have against people. Like I did every fourth-step moral inventory that I could find online. Just Google fourth-step moral inventory. There's some great tools. There are different approaches to this exercise. And I was able to get rid of most of the conscious. But unfortunately, the unconscious, barely conscious rage against my father remains and has been largely immune to the work. So now the assignment I got from my program is that I have to pray for him every day, that he receives the things that I want for my life. Like I want a normal amount of human connection. Just give me a normal amount of friends. Just average amount. I'd be thrilled with that. And so I want that for him too. I would just like to have an average normal reaction to someone backing away to me who's important. It's like, just give me a normal amount of fear of abandonment. Just give me a normal amount of anxiety and fear. And so I've been praying for that for my father as well. I find myself asking two main questions each day as part of my program. How free do I want to be from my emotional addictions? I've got a lot of them. I found this great list of 100 signs that you've got a personality disorder online. Google it. and I've got 50 on me. So, I mean, there's a lot of work to do here. So, some days I don't want to be free from my emotional addictions. I just want to be free to hate and resent. But I realize that that's just going to lead me back to the life I've been living over the past 46 years. So I come back, okay, Luke, how free do you want to be from your addictions? I've been porn-free for 3 years. That's a start. The other question I ask myself is, how real do I want God to be in my life? Like, I've lived all my life in organized religion. Raised Seventh-day Adventist, converted to Orthodox Judaism. But somehow, that whole life, immersed in religion, like, something happened. My addiction was more powerful. And like, changing religions didn't shift my sex addiction, my love addiction, my fear of abandonment, my tendency to codependent relationships, my tendency to use people. My tendency to use people was not affected by all these religious transformations and by doing yoga and Alexander technique and psychotherapy. It was not shifted. So, what do I mean by these two very lofty questions? How free do I want to be from my emotional addictions, and how real do I want God to be in my life? Let me talk about road rage. I have huge road rage. Someone cuts me off. I don't normally swear, but in the car, on the road, I swear way too much. That's because I want to control everything around me. If someone's not going fast enough or cuts me off, I'm trying to control. And as an addict working in 12-step program, I've got to realize that if I try to control things, it's going to be a mess. I'm just going to screw things up. And I've got a 46-year history to prove that. So it's a good 12-step where I say, hey, I'm no longer the director of this play. This play of my life. God's the director. God's in charge. I can't control what other people are doing. So if you've got road rage, you're working a weak program. I don't care if your program's yoga or religion or Alexander technique or psychotherapy. Road rage is a symptom that there's important disconnection and something really wrong in your life. The other thing is work. There are days when I just hate my job because I made my living from writing for years. And I think I'm the greatest writer of my generation. And so, like, I'm working as an assistant, and I'm typing letters, and I'm filing for the past year, and sometimes that, like, eats at me. It's a symptom that I'm working a weak program. Because there's one primary reason to go to work, particularly for an addict, and that's to help God's kids. If I start thinking, oh, I'm not getting paid enough, or my work's not important enough, or I'm the greatest writer of my generation, why am I typing some other guy's letter? That's just going to spiral me down into resentment, into being a dick, to getting fired, to not making my credit card payments. That's just going to spiral me down. So I've got to keep coming back every day. Okay, the purpose of going to work is to help God's kids. My boss is one of God's kids. The people that we work for are God's kids. That's the reason to go to work. So I have to keep coming back to that, or I'll just screw things up. Thank you.
Just how obvious it is that Luke is so willing to reveal, to reflect, to dig, to investigate, and his classmates know how much he's done of this. And I just want to congratulate you for just all the wonderful work and sharing your story with everyone. And again, he would love to get feedback, so you can email him. And so thank you for being here. The way we really understand our stories is by telling them, by being witnessed, telling them. So you're an important part of his creative process. And you are welcome to stay. There is another wonderful story that will be unfolding, and that you will get to go to Peru with Michael Cass in ceremony at 8:30. So thank